NutriCast.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
This message is brought to you by Abercrombie Kids, where the activewear is made for every summer activity, so your mini-me can bring their personal best. Summer days are always an adventure, from day camp to rec leagues and pool days. Abercrombie Kids has the shorts, tees, and swim to keep them comfy and keep up with them. Get everything for the entire summer at Abercrombie Kids. Shop in-store, online, or in the app.
Anytime you are creating an art form, it is very important to be respectful and conscious of what you are asking of your audience. What matters in the end is not how clever you were or what tricks you used or how cool your tech was. What matters is what the audience member with their butt in the seat, or the listener with the headphones on, or the gamer sitting in front of their computer, what they experience.
Welcome to Brain Arcade, Jessica.
Thank you.
So, thank you for coming on. I've been trying to get you on because A, we always have good conversations, and B, I think we're going to have a good flow, and your viewpoint is very different from industry standard production people, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I think you have a really cool
Let's get
lens.
this crazy lady on here. She will have things to say.
Yes, that's right. She got a lot to say and nowhere to say it, so I'm going to provide it. So tell me your story after you introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Jessica Woodard. I am, as previously identified, a crazy woman. I know you. I guess I'll tell people that. Why not? I know you because we worked together on The Walking Dead Last Mile. I am a writer. I am a recovering theater kid. And right now I get paid as a producer in a video game studio. So that's sort of like my CV, I guess. Okay, here's
the Woodward story.
The Woodward story. So my brother had to do a genealogy chart when he was in like 6th grade or something. I don't know why that seems like a very strange 6th grade project, but he did. And he traced the one side of my family all the way back. And it turned out that several generations ago, many generations ago, there had been a single family and they split apart. And the reason they split apart was because one side of the family was horse thieves, and the other side of the family didn't want to be associated with the horse thieves anymore. So one side of the family was the Woodward family, and one side of the family was the Woodard family. But here's the thing. We know the story, but we don't know which side of the family was the horse thieves.
Oh, wow. So you might be a snooty jerk or a horse thief.
I might be descended from horse thieves.
That's fantastic. Exactly. That's amazing. So I can trace my mom's lineage all the way back into China because of her maiden name. But that's a story for another time. We'll save that.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just say it involves some Mongolians and stuff. No, I don't know. Everybody's part Mongolian.
Genghis Khan got around.
He did. Bro was active.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said your day job is making games, but you're a theater kid. That's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, because it's very interesting that most people get into games as their passion. And it's like, it's not that you're not excited about it, but you have a competing passion, or at least a different expression, because I actually think there are some similarities, the entertainment angle. And so tell me a little bit about what that mix is for you first, of like why video games as your day job. You could just as easily be doing accounting or something, you know what I mean? Or something dry.
I mean, why would I ever want to do accounting? I love creating things. I think that is the basic answer for anything. I mean, there are a lot of things that I am capable of doing, but when it comes right down to it, if what I do with my days can involve contributing to a creation of some kind, that is the ideal goal for me. And so I think video games, because it was like, I'm a producer, so I do a lot of scheduling. There's a lot of calendars and things in my life. And it was like, this is something that I can contribute to what is ultimately what I view as an art form, at least. Like, I think video games are an art form, at least they are when they're being done well and with passion. maybe not every mobile game, but I'm just saying.
Maybe not every console game either.
Not every, but some mobile games for sure. Like you get into it and you're like, someone really loved this. So,
there are moments, and it's my viewpoint right now is that the KPI driven structure of our industry currently represses art, but it's the same in entertainment. All entertainment has
absolutely
this parallel.
So it's really interesting. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theatrical Production,
okay,
which is a mouthful. And if you're not going to go into theater, it's an incredibly useless degree, but it's very fun to get. I will tell you that.
Okay.
But one of the things that I learned in school was because I was specifically a technical director. So I was responsible for what went on the stage, the technical aspects of things. I learned how a production ideally ought to run, right? Everybody has their sphere. Everybody contributes to their sphere. There's very clear lines of communication. It's very collaborative. Everyone works together. And then in the end, you have this beautiful product that everyone brought their passion and their insight and their knowledge to. And after leaving school, I have often found that the places where you get that the most closely replicated are where people are doing it just for the love of theater. Like once you get industry with it, certainly this is anecdotal, extremely anecdotal. I have not done studies or anything, but I think, look, not to take this down a money is the root of all evil kind of pathway, but I'm just saying, once money gets involved, people do tend to pull away from that. What are we super passionate about? What do we really want to make? What would be true art here? And it's more like what will sell. Yeah.
So we're halfway through, I think, the next question that I'm going to ask, because you came into games with the production background. So was that I need to get a job and look at this producer at was Terrible Posture your first game or no?
Terrible Posture was my first game studio. So okay. So I'll tell this story too. I love this story. I was a author and a stay-at-home mom for about a decade. And incidentally, I think the author thing definitely contributed because I write a lot, but I also think that being a stay-at-home mom, people don't do this, but everyone should look on resumes. And if you want to hire someone who is super organized and can get things done, go look for a stay-at-home mom, because all they do is run other people's lives all day long. Yeah. It's incredibly relevant. But I needed to go out and get a job. It was time. And so I ended up getting hired at a company, and it was just a friendship hire. My friend who worked at the company was like, you should hire my friend because you need someone to do this job, and she can totally do it, and she'll be great, and you'll love her, and you should definitely hire her. And so I went in and talked to his boss, and his boss was like, actually, you're great. I like you. I will hire you. It was great.
That's awesome.
And while I was there, one of my coworkers who was sort of heading up the team that I was helping out on, her husband was Joe Mirabello. And Joe, for anyone who doesn't know, Joe is the CEO and founder of Terrible Posture Game Studio. And his producer was on the way out the door, and he was looking for a new producer. And his wife was like, hey, you need to apply for this job because Joe needs what you can do. And you would have fun working at his studio. And then presumably went and told Joe, hey, you need to hire her. She's what you're looking for. And then Joe and I met, and I met the outgoing producer, and I had an interview, and then I was like, okay. And so I went to work there.
That's fantastic.
I have the luckiest career history ever for anyone in the entire world.
I'm going to misquote this, but I do believe that luck is 75% being flexible in seeing opportunities, and then 25% committing to those gambles.
Sure.
Right. And so, what seems like a gamble at the time, but if you're kind of open, by the way, this probably leans way too heavy into fringe philosophy, like The Secret or manifesting or something like that. But there's it took me a lot of time to trust that my subconscious is working on stuff when my conscious brain is on other things. And so sometimes things will click and you're like, oh, I should do that.
Yeah.
Right. So
I see it like two different ways, because there's the aspect of, like, for me, I did actually have to be competent. Otherwise, I would never have been recommended, right? So there's that aspect of things. But then I think the flip side of that is I always look at it as luck, because I never want to forget that there are definitely, in this world of 8 billion people, other people who are just as competent as I am, who just didn't have that opportunity. And it makes me grateful. It makes me really happy and really grateful, because I'm just like, it happened
totally.
to me.
I totally agree. And so, like, well, it's interesting from my viewpoint. I look back on my career, and there are lucky spots for sure, and there are some whatever the normal ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
But in the mid '90s, for me to be working in games, I realized how lucky I was not to be working in games, but to have access. So there was like a little bit of a privilege point of like, wow, this was even in my world as a consideration. I mean, I like 50% is that I worked hard to put it in my world, but the other, the other part of that was like, there was some luck involved in that, fully capable of doing this job, and I got in at the right time for me.
Exactly.
Etc. So let's transition that a little bit. Before you were a stay-at-home mom, I assume you were doing theater stuff?
Before I was a stay-at-home mom, I taught people to pass SAT and LSAT and GRE tests. I was a standardized test tutor. Before that, I did theater stuff.
Got it. So, by the way, here's from my POV. The way I put that together is like, oh, you did theater stuff, then you learned game design, because the LSAT and SAT is 100%. It's not so much about what you know, but it's about how you play that game.
How you approach the question.
You're basically a game tutor. And like for a very specific game, which
very specific
game, but that allowed people to get printed words on their college application. That could be verified, like whatever. There was a leaderboard and like top score and a bunch of stuff like that. So it was basically, so you got game experience, you just didn't know it.
Correct.
Right.
And I also was a gamer. I mean, it tapered off when I started to have kids, because I just didn't have as many hours to sit at the computer anymore. But I was a gamer. I mean, like, I had a hardcore raid group that did dungeon raiding and WoW and.
Were you part of a mom group?
No, I was part of like. My brother, my partner at the time, and then like people who I'm friends with to this day, but I didn't know them. I met them playing World of Warcraft.
So, by the way, the amount of people that have gotten jobs from being like really attached to World of Warcraft is higher than you think.
It's quite a community.
A lot of guild runners became producers.
Yeah.
Because running a guild in WoW was significant.
It was work. Yeah. It was so much work. Yeah.
I like, just apocryphally, I knew of a couple of people that were like, oh my God, this is one of the best producers we've ever had. He was a guild runner in WoW. And he's like, does our day job like cake.
Yep.
So, but by the way, so footnote, like the reason I asked you if you were in a mom group is because, so most people don't realize this, like, by the way, Gamergate is bullshit. All of this whole like who a gamer is. No, I just mean like there's no controversy here. Like gamers are gamers. Like if you would love and enjoy games, like all of the typecasting and stuff is all.
Oh, you're not a real gamer unless you.
Exactly. That's all bullshit. Like, and it's such crap, because it essentially, like, one, games are so ubiquitous now. I can walk up to almost anybody on the street and go, show me your phone.
Yeah, you've got games on there. Yeah,
you've got games on
there,
there, right? You're a gamer. Not only that, though, but everything that's a dry, regular app is also gamified now. So it's like the grammar of games is built into almost everything that we do. However, let's go back to WoW.
Let's go back to WoW.
So WoW, here's the interesting data point. 51% of the audience was female.
Yeah.
At its peak.
Yeah.
Right. And most people don't realize that. And like, it's interesting, especially because there were a lot of news stories about like, oh, this couple met in WoW and then they got married, and like, or they had a wedding in WoW, or they did all of this other stuff. You can't do that when it's all well, you could do it.
They can all be gay dudes.
They could all be gay dudes. Correct. Yeah. But to have heteronormative weddings
You have to have.
You have to have both males and females, and like
I just really enjoy that we're talking about a wedding between a night elf and an orc and calling them heteronormative. Like,
yeah,
sure,
that's right.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
but it's great. Like, yeah, I bet you that's a whole podcast episode. But and here's the funny point: there was like full like mom guilds. Because they were stay-at-home moms and they would play during the day.
So yes, that makes perfect sense to me. I never got in on that. In fact, after my son was born, we called him Elliot Waxler Woodard, Destroyer of Raids. So
that's brilliant.
Because he would wake up. He was. Okay. My partner at the time was a gamer, but we would be raiding. My son would be in bed asleep, and we'd be raiding, and then over the baby monitor. Everyone would hear the cry because we'd be on Ventrilo. Everyone would hear the cry and they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, sorry, guys, I got to go. And then we wipe. It'd be terrible.
They're like, no.
We were so close.
So, but they even had their own chat abbreviations that were mom guild specific.
That's amazing. What did they have?
BRB, BF.
Be right back, baby fussy?
Feeding,
okay,
but not baby feeding, but like be right back baby feeding, like
yeah
right so there was a whole, they had their own lexicon of like mom specific like abbreviated chat like jargon. So
that was those hours, those like preschool hours or like school hours, those were the hours I wrote in. Like,
interesting. Okay. So you had other sort of endeavors also to distract you from gaming.
Yes. So. To distract me from. I thought you were going to say to distract you from parenting, and I was going to be like, I think everyone does because you don't make it through parenting without something to distract you. But to distract me from gaming, I had other endeavors.
But like built into this, when we first started this, you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make a connection between like theater world and this, that, or like what the topic is going to be. But the topic really is here is like, there are outside skills that are not necessarily learned in games that you bring to games. Oh, yeah. Right. And so if I could list those off, there was like, well, we identified one that you didn't already hit. Right. So you had a theater background, but theater production is entertainment production and also the melding of like process to induce creativity. Right. Yeah. But also within limitations. You always have like a time limit or some other crunchy thing, even if sometimes it's money, sometimes it's time. Yep. Sometimes it's personalities, but you start to learn about how to get to the goal, whatever that goal is. Then you also had teaching how to win a game, which is the LSAT and the SAT.
Never would have put it that way, but yes, absolutely. Well, I did that.
I'm going to eventually do a solo episode where I talk about my viewpoint on the world is everything's a game.
I know definitely there's some people who agree with you.
Yeah. So every time I see a handrail, it's Tony Hawk. Like I want to grind it. When I see like a vent, I want to crawl in it. Like basically my viewpoint is so game centric that I can make the parallel to game for almost anything. Whether that's good or bad, no idea. It's kind of working for me.
You want to hear another story?
Yeah, go for it.
It's going to derail you. Okay. So when I was in high school, I had a Dungeons and Dragons group that met every weekend. And this one weekend we played from like Friday night until afternoon on Sunday and didn't sleep. So don't drive when you're sleep deprived. It's bad. But when I was driving home after that, I was pulling up to a stoplight and it turned red on me and I had to stop. And I was like, God, I wonder if the DM will let me re-roll that.
Wow. That's when you know you're gaming a lot. So
that's maybe too much even.
You know what though? I had a similar thing. I was doing a lot of hours on Diablo as a tester. And like there was a way that you could marquee select stuff, which nobody understands as a terminology thing anymore. So when you draw a box around something and it selects everything in the box, which is marquee select. And I was in traffic and my brain was trying to marquee select the car in front of me and move it. You know, it was like basically the reflex action of what your brain wanted to do was like move this thing.
Yep. Deal with this impediment to my life.
Yeah, it might have been Warcraft 2 testing actually, because marquee selecting was much more common there. I don't know. It was a long time ago. So I'm starting to gear way more towards advice for indies.
Okay.
right? And like even individual or like small group indies, because well, here, I'll give you the short because, and I'll do a whole nother solo episode on this.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
As an industry whole, so I'm not indicting any individuals, we have failed to mentor like the last 3 generations of game designers. Like I still see people solving the same problems I was solving in 1997 that could have been taught in a class or could have been mentored in a way that you're like, why is this a problem for you? Oh, you don't understand the foundation.
The wheel?
Or even just jumping over the same speed bump I jumped over when I can get you there in 5 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to you having to come up with some scientific method to determine why like movement feels bad. I could tell you, show it to me. I'll play it for you. So where I'm getting at is like, I want you to start steering your answers towards kind of like advice to the next generation, right? Okay. And so, but that viewpoint of like coming from a place where you thought wasn't related is starting to stitch together. I actually think that you were always meant to be in games. You just didn't know it.
So it was fate.
It was fate. But also the studio you ended up at, I will actually call that lucky in the fact that I think you ended up at the right studio.
Yeah.
Right. And so, well, okay. You agreed with me. Why did you agree?
Why did I agree with you that I ended up at the right studio?
Yeah.
Terrible Posture Games is very open-minded and welcoming of what each individual person there can bring to the table. Mm-hmm. So, like I know, to a certain extent, I was talking about this with someone else the other day, but the larger a company, and this, I don't think this is unique to games, but the larger a company gets, the more granular everyone's job gets and more specific, right? Like you do this particular task and then you don't really step outside of your lane because that's someone else's job. We hire a distinctly different role for that. Sure. And I think this is true for TPG, and I think it's true for, or I would hope it would be true at a lot of healthier indie companies, which is that everyone is welcome to bring to the table whatever they have to bring to the table. Mm-hmm. So I'm a producer at Terrible Posture Games, but specifically when Joe was looking to hire a producer, there was a big narrative project coming up. And mm-hmm. so the fact that I had a background in writing was really was just a bonus as far as he was concerned. But that means that like to this day, if there's something that needs to be written, then Joe feels confident that he can potentially ask me to do it if that's necessary, because he knows that I have that ability. We have people who came in, we have someone who came in as an animator and is essentially working as a UI designer now. And she's brilliant at it. She's really good at it, but she never would have moved in that direction if there hadn't been space for her to grow there. So one of the things that I think TPG does really well, and this starts at the top with like Joe and Zuko founded the company and they came to it with this mindset, is that they're like, we're going to hire you to do this, but then anything else you can bring to the table, we have space for that, right? And we ask people to wear a lot of hats, but we also let people wear a lot of hats. And those are two distinctly different things. And being allowed to sort of like stretch your wings and try out different things and contribute to the conversation, even if the conversation isn't necessarily like right in your lane, but it is a wonderful environment. It's wonderful for me in particular. And I think I think it's generally a good environment for most people.
I agree. And it sounds like there's like a soft unspoken there, which is that basically, yeah, at some point though, you just don't let everybody run willy nilly. You have to be able to like sort that a little bit. Sure, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I just mean that like sometimes if you get into a conflict and it's like, it's more of a cultural thing, right? Yeah. I'm very accepting as a game lead to take input from everywhere and allow people to stretch, right? But you can get into places where you're like, okay, hold on, now you're doing my job for me. Like back up a little bit. Let me get like, there's a skill set to like, filtering or at least channeling the feedback towards the goal, right? And I would say that probably you and Joe are working a lot subconsciously or like just automatically in making sure that everybody, they can try stuff and in fact can move to stuff, but they're basically not stomping on each other's toes, right?
Oh, sure.
They need to leave room for everybody else is what I'm saying.
People definitely have, sure. It's not like one person is running the whole or like running roughshod all over everybody. But I was thinking more along the lines of like, we all work really collaboratively together, I guess, is what I'm getting to. And
how large? How many people?
Between 12 and 14. The whole time I've been there.
It's a good, it's a great size. Yeah.
It's a wonderful size. And it's a good size to keep things what I'm talking about. It's one of like when I said it's not just large game companies, I don't think. I think it's just large companies in general. Like the bigger you are, the harder it is to let people sort of expand outside their lane because then everybody's doing it and then it becomes a mess all over the place.
It can be more fluid when you're that size. Like the turning points, because I've seen this, I've run teams of all different sizes, is basically under 20 is one stop point. It was like right around 30 is another like culture change, 60. And then just to keep the numbers even, 90 to 120 is actually the place where you stop being a village, right? So like what happens at 30 is you have this need to start specializing. So you start to have artists will start to congregate in one place, designers and there will be a little bit more specialization by discipline. Once you get to 60, it starts turning into slight subspecialties. Where like design's not just a few people over there. It's now like there's a lead and a back, like environment, like there's a puzzle, there's you start to have these mini specialties within discipline. And then the reason 90 to 120 is important and that the reason it's a range is it depends on culture and the task at hand is that's the point where you don't know everybody by face.
Yeah.
So once you hit around 100, you stop knowing people and then the group dynamics completely change. And that's typically corporate culture, like because team sizes start getting very large.
Yeah.
And highly specialized. So I would say because of smaller teams, and I was lucky because I grew with the industry. When I started as a game designer wasn't necessarily, it was a new thing. Because like a programmer and an artist could make an Atari 2600 cartridge. Right. And they both just participated in the game design. And then once they started getting larger and teams got larger, you started needing people to specialize in game design and own that. But then, I saw all of these growth points. And so what's super interesting about that is like under the sub 30 size, I shipped everything. I did pixel art. I did 3D art. I did map design. I did AI. You know what I mean? And like, those opportunities come up on smaller teams because you have a need and maybe not headcount.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
The reason I'm kind of focused in on this is like I said, I'm aiming a lot more at indies and I'm not even sure indies are going to hit the 12 mark in the future. Like I think team sizes are going to average like 5 to 6 or 7.
This is a thing I've been thinking about a lot. And this is way off topic, but I think team sizes for creating games is going to start trending way down, like way down.
I agree.
And I think that my son wants to make games and I think he's going to be one of those people who does a weird game that it either takes off or doesn't. Like it depends on whether or not it's popular, but like one of those people who spends like 5 years doing everything on some game that has a weird hook and a weird mechanic and then people will like it or they don't. And like, then he'll move on and make the next one. And I guess like the thing, and I talk to him about this a lot too, my kid. I'm like, there's some things that you're never going to do. Like he does pixel art. He's never going to do 3D art. That's not his thing. But like, learn to do as many of the things as you can.
Yes.
Think about all the things, because when you're talking about those small team sizes, the more versatile each member of that team is, the more you bring to the table in terms of your bag of tricks to pick from.
I totally agree. I think the ecosystem in games is changing. Mm-hmm. It just is. There's just not enough we won't need to discuss it now, but the ecosystem is changing. Let's just take that as a argument
given. Yes.
Argument given. Like that's just a data point. People that want to make games are going to come out, and because of the ecosystem, they're going to end up making games on their own. Mm-hmm. Right.
Or with 2 or 3 close friends.
2 or 3 close friends. We're going back to this sort of tribal garage gaming sort of place, but the problem is discoverability or an ecosystem that supports that kind of game. And it's hard right now because just like I said, Gamergate is like a superficial, stupid issue that's like, that only applies to a certain perception of what the game industry is. And actually we're headed into a place where it's going to be more Etsy than Amazon. Right. And so we're going to have lots of handcrafted stuff. We're going to have small teams. Technology is going to allow people to build things that are way above their weight, and there's going to be a whole spectrum in between. And for those people, I actually think this is a great, you're a perfect guest because you can, because you show that to actually make that happen, right? It might be difficult for you to get a job at Microsoft tomorrow, right? Yeah. But for this new ecosystem coming up, you're actually leading the way for tomorrow's theater majors that turn to games, right? In the fact
tomorrow's game developers who would theater majors.
Well, but let me shift a little bit. So just because there's a whole episode built into let's talk about the state of the industry. I already did one kind of, and I think there's new information. I'll come back to it. But the theater major angle, and I'm serious. I actually think is people are going to come to games from however they either got through school or didn't get through school, and they're going to have to learn how to apply what they learned in life to what they're doing. And I do not know that you're not at a disadvantage if you didn't go to USC Game School or DigiPen or SCAD or something like that. You're not. You're just going to have to figure out how to apply some skills. So actually take a moment and give me the bullet point list of the transferable skills that are helping you in games right now.
Oh, okay. So first of all,
you're like, oh, that's easy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So planning a project, working a full timeline, understanding how to budget not only materials, but the resources of who you have available and what they bring to the table. The basic hard-earned lesson that nothing goes according to time or budget, so you always need contingency built in. How to collaborate with a team. And then the very practical aspects of every visual thing that happens in games and audible thing that happens in games relates very directly to theater. There is scenery, there is lighting, there are costumes, there is the physical look of the characters, there is the sound design, all of that is almost a direct one-to-one. It's a different media, but all of that is applicable.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because you actually naturally segued to where I wanted to go. Okay. Which was the relationship between games and other entertainment. And there's only one difference, and it's important, which is there's input and output from the audience. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you're not telling a story, you're crafting a story with the audience to some respects. It doesn't matter how linear you are, you still have to get them to buy in. Right. Yep. Very directly through button presses or something like that. So the psychology is a little bit different. But
even for that, there are audience interactive performance pieces.
There are, or even if you go to like an improv show where the audience is contributing to stuff.
Yeah,
there are edge cases here where they cross over. But the presentation of information is very much the same. Yeah. And it's partially because almost everything in games is presented through a screen, just like everything else. And so the one part of this is very comfortable to us. And so speaking in the language of theater, movie, TV is actually extremely comforting for the audience because it's something they know. It's a story grammar they know. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, so what other things, like I'm not a theater person, but I can fake talking about like, movies and TV and whatnot, but that's not what I do. Like I am not a craftsman in that.
Right. You said, tell me about other things, but like, what was the end of that sentence? Cause then you.
Well, tell me about other things that you're bringing over from theater as far as audience presentation. And so like that visual and audio communication, cause there's a whole, like without getting into the full iceberg, like give me some examples of like, like X, or this is how we do stage blocking. And that's actually applicable because of blah, or,
Well, so I actually think the thing that I think I've been thinking about most recently is sound design. And it's not like the soundtracks, not the songs that go in, but the stuff like the Foley work that happens, because that is, when I went to school, our sound professor is one of the few people in the country who has a degree in psychoacoustics. And so we did a production of the Scottish play. I will not say the word. We did a production of the Scottish play in which he did the sound design, and he like piped in these sub-audible noises into the theater to make people uncomfortable the whole time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
As someone who ran the light booth, it was horrible. But like for the production, it was amazing. Like as an art piece, it was amazing. And so I think a lot about his work because when you get into how immersive a game is, like I feel like Foley work carries so much weight there. But if you do it well, people almost don't notice it, right? Like they just expect the door to slam and the feet to hit the floor and the heavy breathing of the monster and the everything else.
Totally.
And that is a kind of thing because a lot of people notice character design, right? It's right front and center. You're looking at it all the time. And that includes things that's hair, makeup, costumes, right? Everybody gets that. It's very
silhouette, proportions,
right?
All of that.
All of that. So like character design is really front and center, but that stuff like Foley work, that stuff is so like immediately applicable from theater or from movies. And it's directly applicable. And it's also the kind of thing that already knowing about it, because you come from a background that uses it, is really useful because you walk in and it's like, oh yeah, I get it. I get why we need this. I mean, theater has special effects. You design them and construct them completely differently, but they've got special effects in there.
So here's kind of why like my sort of commentary on this. Like I'll do a sound one at some point, but you're almost never building a simulation sound. You're building sounds towards the audience expectation. So or towards their movie expectation of what the sound should sound like. Because nobody's actually heard what a Well Rod 22 silenced pistol sounds like. Correct. Right? But when I say silenced pistol, you're going to immediately think of sounds that you've heard from movies, right? And so sound design is one of those things where you have to walk this line between, I want to introduce the reality a little bit, but also give you a qualitative sense that it was correct.
Yes.
Right? And
which has nothing to do with whether or not it's actually correct.
Absolutely not. In which case, games...
Lighting is very similar in that regard, right?
Absolutely.
Like people have very strong emotional reactions to particular lighting schemes that are not actually the way it would look if you were doing that, but they get super into it, right?
Absolutely. And so there's the creation of illusion in theater is actually super applicable to games because the example... So we're about out of time, but I think that's going to be our summation here, which is essentially like the most applicable thing from theater, I think, from the craftsmanship part, is that you are creating an illusion, right, that is speaking to the audience in a way that they can fill out the rest of it as like a real experience, right? And experience is the word that I'm using because they don't know why the sound sounds good. They'll just come away with like, that was awesome. right? And so it's this impression feeling space, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say an illusion, I would say an immersive experience, because it's not that you fool them into believing that something is there that's not. It's that you beguile them with the way you're telling the story in every aspect, not just the performance, but the every aspect of the way you're presenting the story to them, where they willingly set aside the suspension of disbelief is a willing gift that they give you so that they can come with you on that ride. And I think that's true for games as well, right? Like there's so much that's unbelievable, but you do it right and people will come with you, whether it's Among Us or incredibly realistic 3D modeling.
So I don't know if I've said this on camera yet, but like one of the first things that when I first started mentoring game designers or first started teaching, to build stuff the way I wanted it built, I actually said, everybody go ride Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a full experience. It's a linear level. You can't see it all in one shot. As soon as you get in the line, they're building the experience.
Disney does an amazing job. Whatever else you think about Disney,
the Imagineering,
incredible job.
Haunted Mansion also
so
fits.
Good. So good.
Those two in particular, because I'm LA based, I said everybody go to Disneyland, ride Pirates of the Caribbean. Yep. However, there are illusions built into it, but they're just part of building the experience, right?
Yes.
So the one that I use is I don't want you to go build me a simulation of World War II. What I want you to do is give me the illusion that they're there, and you don't have to build everything. Like when I say a campfire, it doesn't have to be a campfire. It can be cellophane with a light and a fog machine and some other shit. And then I don't need, when you get to the pirate scene at the end and they're shooting at the fort, there's no actual cannonballs, but there's a puff of smoke, a light, a sound, a splash, and a puff of air. And they give you the feeling that it was
They sell it.
Right. But it's about the feel. Yes. Right. And they create a feeling through the illusions or towards the craftsmanship. And so there are things like that. I love seeing stuff where you're watching an opera thing and blood is represented by a red piece of cloth that's drawn out of the costume. And it's amazing because you don't think it's real blood. But as part of the context of the rules of the theater world, you're barely
understand exactly what's being represented to you. Yes.
And then not only that, you can even start to think, wow, that's a lot, even though it's just a big cloth. And so, the choice
I could make a dress out of that blood.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, I think I can hang that as drapes. Yep. So that's a super fun thing from the maker side of the psychology of gamers and how they're willing to accept the illusion. And if you, or not illusion, but the experience, and you really have to take care in not breaking the experience, but also in the crafting of, mechanical illusions or sleight of hand. These things all come into play. And so to me, one of the most important classes that I ever took that's been applicable to the rest of my life was speech class. Formal speech giving.
Oh yeah.
Formal speech class, not whatever.
Right.
I have enough speech impediments that are purely mine, but the is basically oration, but the reasoning and the organization of thoughts to be effective in a spoken manner, because it has also influenced games. And I think the parallel here that I'm trying to draw is all of your theater learning and how to be good at theater has applied to your input on the game side. And I think you should give yourself more credit for how much that's applicable. You know what I mean? And you're much more of an expert than you think.
Okay. I just, okay. If you say so, I mean, okay. I'm going to throw this out to you.
Okay, go for it.
Another thing that I think is really applicable. Anytime you are creating an art form, it is very important to be respectful and conscious of what you are asking of your audience.
Yes.
And once you learn that skill, it applies to anything. So it doesn't actually matter if you're an expert at any one particular creative process. You have that central, very important piece of it, which is that what matters in the end is not how clever you were or what tricks you used or how cool your tech was or any of that. What matters is what the audience member with their butt in the seat, or the listener with the headphones on, or the reader with the word on the page, or the gamer sitting in front of their computer, what they experience. And that is universal. And anyone with any kind of creative or arts background is going to understand that.
And scene. That is a great way to summarize everything we were dancing around, and like it's the perfect takeaway. Thanks for coming on. This was super fun. You have to come back on because I want to dig in a little bit on like I think it might be fun to design something with you live that is like bring what you're bringing with your theater background, and I will enable it.
Okay.
Right? Like basically,
what's the game?
That's the question. We'll figure it out. It out.
Okay, we'll live design a theater game.
We'll live design a theater game. Like basically, like start with audience, like you just said.
Okay.
And it'll be theater-oriented audience. Like basically, make a game for you at 18, and then we'll go from there. We'll go from there.
At 18. Okay. All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. We'll arrange like another time for you to come back on. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, I did. It's always lovely to chat with you.
It's always fun. It's always a good time. Awesome.
Bye, Cross.
Bye. Brain Arcade is a Princess Hermit production, produced by Kyrene Kim, music and mixing by Jonathan Ontiveros. The podcast is hosted by me, Chris Cross. You can find me and my other endeavors at coffeewithcross.com.
I'm Iris, host of Or Whatever Movies and the forthcoming Powers of Darkness podcast. For the better part of a decade, we've been unraveling a literary mystery that begins with a strange version of Dracula. Yes, that Dracula. It's a different story, imbued with a potentially insidious agenda. What we've already found so far reshapes what we thought we knew, but the investigation isn't over. Support our efforts to finish what we've started and bring the full story to light. Go now to Kickstarter.com and search up Powers of Darkness to learn more. Coming soon on Electricast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Electricast.